Good day, everyone. Welcome to Real Conservative Headline News. I'm your host, Nathaniel Rajkumar. Starting off locally here in Trinidad and Tobago, wonderful news. The High Court has permanently stopped extradition proceedings against former FIFA Vice President Jack Warner, ruling that the continuation of the proceedings breached his constitutional right to liberty. Wonderful news. Look how long it took, though. My goodness, boy. And yet no one will be held accountable, legally, criminally accountable for what took place and for destroying this man's life. In a judgment delivered by Justice Devendra Rampasad Reed, the court found that the issuance of an authority to proceed ATP in the absence of an arrangement with the United States guaranteeing the protections on specialty required under Section 8.3 of the Extradition, Commonwealth and Foreign Territories Act, Chapter 1204, constituted a breach of Warner's rights. Boy. The extradition proceedings against Warner began in 2015 after the United States requested his extradition in relation to alleged money laundering offenses involving Warner and other persons associated with FIFA. And the thing about it is, I believe in the beginning, I did believe it. And then I realized later on, years later, most likely it was just a witch hunter. It was just probably for political reasons. A provisional warrant was issued for Warner's arrest on May 27, 2015. He surrendered the same day and was released on bail the following day. Justice Reed's judgment states that the requested arrangement was never produced because there was no bespoke specialty arrangement between Trinidad and Tobago and the United States regarding Warner. The judge found that the failure to correct the record and subsequent representations made to the Privy Council regarding the existence of such an arrangement breached the Attorney General's duty of candor. How is that not a crime? How this person is not going to be held accountable for his actions? Why Daddy State always have to end up spending the millions of dollars, boy, to compensate victims instead of these individuals? And why these people don't end up facing prison time as well? Justice Reed said the conduct resulted in a course of misrepresentation, which deprived Warner of the opportunity to promptly challenge the authority to proceed and obtain relief. She said the seriousness of the conduct cannot be overstated. You hear what is that? What are these judges saying? Seriousness of conduct, so they know that something serious was done. And yet no criminal charges will ever be laid. Nothing. These people, these individuals will never be held personally accountable for their actions. And that making representations to a court that are known, listen to the word, known to be false in order to influence proceedings amounted to an abuse of the court's process. Known, people. To me, that sounds like criminal intent. However, Justice Reed noted that she did not find that at the time the certificate of specialty was issued, the then Attorney General was certifying the existence of a bespoke specialty arrangement that did not exist. She said the certificate appeared to have been referring to the specialty protections contained within the extradition treaty itself. My Lord, I'm telling you, people, the kind of incompetence, the kind of corruption that continues to take place at the highest levels in our society, and no one is ever held accountable for it. Personally, I'm talking about you did the UNC people right now because it's UNC government, but this took place basically under PNM. So even the PNM people will say, the people will get compensation, so leave the people alone. No, when state officials commit these types of acts, they should be held personally accountable. When police officers wrongfully imprison people and fabricate evidence, they should be held criminally accountable. Compensate the people out of your own pockets and be sent to prison. The DPP as well, you're supposed to have enough sense to know that this is not looking right. You should be held accountable. The judges who watch out these cases and say this is not making sense, and yet you still end up going ahead and leaving people in prison. You all should be held accountable. Compensate people with your own money. And if there's a case of malicious malicious prosecution and fabrication of evidence, these people should face time in prison.
Weather report for Saturday, July 18, 2026, Trinidad and Tobago. The weather forecast predicts partly cloudy to occasionally cloudy conditions with scattered showers and thunderstorms accompanied by mild Saharan dust. Daytime highs will peak around 26 degrees Celsius to 30 degrees Celsius with an overnight low of 24 degrees Celsius to 25 degrees Celsius, while the maximum heat index is expected to feel like 33 degrees Celsius. East to east-southeastern winds will move at 10 to 45 km per hour with higher gusts possible during heavy downpours. Humidity levels will remain very high, ranging between 70% to 90% throughout the day. A mild concentration of Saharan dust will bring slightly hazy skies, and sensitive individuals should take the necessary respiratory precautions. Open waters will experience moderate to occasionally rough seas with waves from 1.5 meters to 2.0 meters, occasionally reaching 2.5 meters. Sheltered areas will stay between 1.0 meters to 1.5 meters but can become choppy, so marine interests are urged to exercise caution.
International news now. As the U.S. prepares for a possible expansion of the campaign against Iran, Israel is far from being sidelined. I think you all kind of fooling yourselves right now. Israel is being sidelined. You didn't hear the kind of utter nonsense that J.D. Vance was saying, trying to blame Israel for influencing, trying to bully America. You could believe that? You're talking just like the QAnons and Vance talking just like people like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson now. And Trump is saying nothing about it. That's what even makes it worse. Israeli officials are actively involved in the discussions and intelligence assessments with Washington. Well, we know that, but still, I would not even get involved right now because Trump basically betraying you all. Sources familiar with the talks told I-24 News that the Americans know that if Israel re-enters the campaign, if Israel enters the campaign, Iran would suffer devastating consequences. Yes, of course, we know that. But honestly speaking, America is betraying you all. And you know what they will do? They will use you all to come, if they do decide to let you all come back into the war, right? Because remember, they feel they are king, so they can tell you all, don't come, or to come, right? They believe that they're in control of you all. Trump is king of Israel. So if they invite you all to come back and get involved in the war, they will use you all for your expertise. And then all of a sudden, while you all are getting the job done, and they decide, time to go back to the negotiating table, they will say, ceasefire, 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 and then you have to go back home. And then hush about. And you know what's going to happen? The Iranians and their proxies will be pissed off with you, and they will be attacking your own people in Israel. You know what? Nathaniel, stay out of this one. Stay out of this one completely, because it's your people's lives will be endangered. Learn from the last time. They used you. They used you. They abused you, and then they refused you. I'm talking about America. Leave America. Let them do their job on their own. So far, Tehran has been careful not to draw Israel into the Gulf conflict. Yeah, because they know if Israel starts to strike them. But if that changes, Israeli assessments suggest it would likely be driven by the regime's more hardline factions. That's the thing about it. Don't get me wrong. If Iran decides to attack Israel, by all means, Israel, you attack them with full force. Because you know why? That's totally different. Right? You'll be defending your own country. But don't do it because Trump asked you to come and help him. No. Tell Trump, relax yourself and do whatever you have to do on your own. If they attack your nation, if Iran attacks your nation of Israel, then fine. Go straight ahead. The message communicated by certain officials is as follows. Israel is seen as a far greater threat to the Iranian regime than the U.S. for now. Israel isn't watching from the sidelines, it's on standby. Yeah, because they know that if Israel starts to target them, they'll be targeting them in a lot of different areas, not just at the coastline and not in those areas just to protect the Strait of Hormuz like what Trump is doing. They'll be actually going after these state officials, these radical jihadists in Iran. The radical jihadists in Iran with the IRGC and the remaining members of the Ayatollah. Those individuals that want to continue with their mission to usher in their religious mission, their agenda to usher in the coming of their Messiah. And to do that, they believe that they have to destroy the infidels in the world, wage war against the infidels in the world. So they believe that they have to destroy little Satan, which is in their mind, in their eyes, Israel, and big Satan, which is America. They believe unless they do that, the Messiah won't return. They have to do that first. So Israel knows that and understands that well. So they know that it will be to crush and topple and destroy the Iranian regime. The Iranians don't write about now that Trump just playing games with them because he still wants to negotiate. Understand the difference? The Alameda County Board of Supervisors approved a landmark Black Reparations Act plan on June 30th, 2026, shifting from research to structural policy implementation. Now, of course, my conservative friends will not like this at all because they don't like the idea of reparations. I personally think it isn't practical either, and I will say that in my commentary. I will also say that if it is you want reparations, then you have to seek reparations on Mama Africa as well, because Mama Africa is the one that sold your people, stole their rivals who were also Africans from various tribes, and sold them to the merchants, the white merchants. So at the end of the day, if you want real reparations, then you have to seek reparations from Mama Africa as well. But nevertheless, I don't mind the state, like in America or wherever, whichever country, saying, you know what, a lot of wrong and a lot of evil was done during slavery. And the thing about it is, they were never really given any sort of actual assistance to develop their communities for decades upon decades. You understand? These people had to struggle for decades. Segregation, persecution, right? For decades after slavery was abolished. So if they want to actually help the communities themselves, I have nothing against that. So listen to this. Rather than broad cash payouts, which I think is not really practical, the framework features 44 phase recommendations targeting decades of government-sanctioned discrimination through institutional overhauls. Key initiatives focus on housing and economic justice, right? Offering down payment assistance to counter historic redlining, low-interest loans for Black-owned businesses, expanded healthcare and criminal justice reform. So what do you think about it is, people say, well, that's kind of discriminatory, though, that, it's Black-owned businesses alone that getting these low-interest loans. What I would say is that provided for the communities, whether it's Black people, whether it's mixed people, whether it's white people that live in those communities, and they're applying to these institutions, you should be able to access those low-interest loans. I don't really like the part with the low-interest loans, because I find that is too specific. You're just providing that privilege for them alone. Would the Black people nowadays like if there's low interest loans just for white people? Or let's just say the people that were from Ireland, the Irish, who were also enslaved at some time in history. Would you all like that? I mean, no. Come on. That low interest thing just for Black people. To me, that sounds like a form of segregation and giving special privilege to some people. I like how it is, if it is you want to focus on developing these communities and uplifting the Black communities, that sounds nice. Because there's a lot of Black people living in those communities. That sounds nice. But to give them special privileges for loans and stuff like that, I don't find that's a good idea at all, honestly speaking. Right? Major exception includes targeted cash restitution for former residents of Russell City, a vibrant neighborhood demolished by county officials via eminent domain in the 1960s. You see, once again, if you want to assist the developing the whole communities, I have no problem with that. No problem with that, right? To manage these sweeping changes, county leaders are launching an immediate equity assessment and creating a permanent standing reparations committee. Supporters hail the policy as a historic milestone, with Reparations Commission leaders calling the county a regional pioneer in wealth building and direct accountability. You see, going back to the loan thing, it's better to really just give people a certain amount of money and done the talk. People who are descendants of these former slaves, right? Because if it is you just giving a special loan to a certain race, people, that is discrimination. You cannot do that, right? If it is you want to base it on compensation, and the thing about it is I can't see any amount of how much compensation you really want to give each person in America or even in Barbados who want reparations to. You're gonna get them out at $50,000 each. That can really compensate for their ancestors who endured their whole life of being enslaved and abused. Do you really think that money can really compensate for that? I'll tell you, it's not practical. In my opinion, it's not practical. The nations of the world and the leaders of the world should do more to admit what is not going on begging for no forgiveness or whatever, but admit that what happened in the past was really extremely evil, and admit that a lot of these nations became wealthy and prosperous because of slavery. You can admit those kind of things and invest, as I said before, invest. If you have never invested before, invest in these communities that have been neglected for decades upon decades. That is what I believe. And I believe a lot of right-thinking people outside there will agree with me. However, critics and wary community members point to the neighboring Oakland Unified School District, where a 2021 student reparations resolution completely stalled due to intense budget disputes. And as you think about it, though, we're going to get the funding. Detractors argue that grand institutional frameworks frequently fail to yield measurable improvements and question using public funds for race-based initiatives. Once again, as I said before, I don't like the loan part about it. And I don't like really putting it on about the race itself, right? But the thing about it is the communities, and these communities which are basically inhabited by African-American people, if it was really neglected for decades upon decades, then that was wrong in the first place. So in a form of compensation, assist with money to be able to develop these places. And of course, you need proper transparency and accountability to ensure that the funds are actually used what it's intended for. Furthermore, because separate and highly contentious board votes are still required to allocate funding, opponents warn that implementation will face immense political and financial roadblocks before any structural changes take effect. By focusing heavily on housing stability, small business support, and structural infrastructure rather than individual checks, this framework aligns more closely with traditional civic development and targeted urban renewal. And that's the thing about it. That's what I like about it. I tell you, all I really have an issue with it, you see the loan part, you're giving special privileges just to one race to get lower loans. I don't like that. That, to me, sounds like discrimination against everyone else, right? This approach often finds common ground across this political spectrum because it prioritizes long-term self-sufficiency, wealth creation, and community resilience over perpetual government dependency. My response, honestly, I don't think an actual reparation is possible or practical, but as a Christian conservative, I have no issue with any government which attempts to assist communities plagued with poverty and crime to overcome their challenges. Because people at the end of the day go back and look at history or whatsoever. After slavery was abolished, these people were basically left alone. They were basically abandoned. They were definitely not compensated, and they were abandoned. And then they had to endure decades of segregation and discrimination and persecution. So people, even though, as I told you before, I can't really see a $50,000 or $100,000 being sufficient to compensate them for what their ancestors endured. And where is it going to find that kind of large amount of money will collapse a country's economy, and then the same black people will suffer. But there are ways to invest in the communities to help these communities to develop themselves, better education, better infrastructure, and so forth, get rid of the gangs and so forth. This is where most conservatives and myself don't usually end up agreeing on issues such as this one. Hopefully in the future, more conservatives will put aside politics and agree with this kind of common sense type of ideas that I am proposing. The reality is that Africans were exploited people, neglected and abused, even after slavery was abolished, more than any other race in the Western Hemisphere. That is the reality, people. That is the reality. That doesn't mean I want them to get any special privileges nowadays, because otherwise the tables will just turn. But compensation in some kind of form, like in assisting in their communities, to develop their communities, I have no issue with that. I don't support victimhood mentality, though. I hate the hypocrisy. I hate how they deny that Mama Africa was complicit in this evil that was done, and they don't seek any reparations from Mama Africa, and I don't like that about it. I don't support victimhood mentality and do believe that gang culture is causing many groups to self-destruct. But I don't consider this type of reparation, if you want to call it, to be woke or a radical leftist concept. Minus, I will conclude with this, minus that loan thing. That loan thing is definitely woke. Woke to the 10th power. Because you want to approve loans. A white man from that community comes and says, well, I like to get a loan, so start a business. And he says, no, well, 20% for you. The black man comes and gets 10% just because he's black. That is discrimination, people. That I cannot approve of.
Bible quote of the day. Psalms 91:7-11. Divine protection and guardian angels. 1,000 may fall at your side and 10,000 at your right hand, but it shall not come near you. You will only look with your eyes and see the recompense of the wicked. Because you have made the Lord your dwelling place, the Most High, who is my refuge, no evil shall be allowed to befall you, no plague come near your tent. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways.
Folks, that brings us to the end of today's headline news. Thanks again to everyone who continues to support my content. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Stay blessed and stay safe most of all. In Jesus' name.